The proximity of the day shelter to the liquor store is encouraging a never-ending cycle of binge drinking, and we see it day in and day out.
Tonight, since a new sobering center opened, the city of Yellowknife has seen a rise in crime and violence in the downtown core.
We'll be venturing into that field because we want to have as many of our citizens owning homes.
Métis in Manitoba who want to buy a first home are getting a boost from a new housing program. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. A House committee continues its study of Bill C-92, which is legislation that will reform child welfare. The Indigenous Peoples Standing Committee continues this work tomorrow. Last week, Karen Baker Anderson and Alyssa Flaherty Spence testified on behalf of a center that helps Inuit children in Ottawa. They have a unique problem and hope the bill will address jurisdictional concerns, as children from Nunavut have no choice but to leave the territory for children's aid services.
They arrive here without documentation, and they go to the school system who says, where's your documentation? Because in Ontario, we document kids till, you know, they're blue in the face so that we can prove services that they need. So there's a real gap there, and we've been to Nunavut a number of times to talk about this gap, but the reality is, from a legal perspective, the guardian is still Nunavut Social Services, and yet they're living in Ontario.
A coalition of First Nations and activist groups are organizing a national day of action for May 27th against what they are calling the White Paper 2.0. They say the Trudeau government's proposed child welfare and Indigenous languages legislation and reforms to First Nations policies could domesticate inherent rights and Indigenous laws. Gord Peters is with a Southern Ontario group, which is part of the Assembly of First Nations.
The only process that we require with Canada and the provinces is an agreement, an intergovernmental agreement about how our laws are going to interact. Once they tell us that we have to sign an agreement to make our laws come into effect, it's no longer our law. That's Canada's power over us, and that's their ability to be able to change our inherent right to a Canadian law. And as soon as you make that agreement with the federal government, you're following their process of the rights recognition. Once you follow that process of the rights recognition, boom, you're on the other side of the coin over there. You're in Section 35. Section 35 has always been about presumed Crown sovereignty. That's where your Indigenous law will end up, as presumed Crown sovereignty.
We always like to hear what you think. Here's how you can continue that conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. You can find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptnnews. You can also follow APTN News on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Indigenous news. The town of Kelleher, just west of Yorkton, Saskatchewan, there was a concern last week around two flags flying over a residence. One had a Nazi symbol on it, the other was a Confederate flag. As Nathaniel Dove tells us, some neighbors were demanding that both flags come down.
Symbols of hatred and white supremacy in rural Saskatchewan. The Nazi flag, along with a Confederate flag, fly above a house in Kelleher. The flags went up on Thursday, causing an outcry from some residents.
That's not right. I got a family and 2 kids, and we live just down the block from that, and that's not appropriate.
I just wish he'd take it down because it's going viral on Facebook and it's making the whole town look bad and look like we're all a bunch of racists. Okay. One, I myself is First Nation, and I've never had any of that in my entire life of living here.
The concern was so pronounced, the RCMP received several calls.
The members in the area did bring the concerns of the community forward to the resident and made them aware of the concerns of the community.
Kelleher is a town of around 220 people. The flag can be seen from a nearby retirement home and an elementary school. For the concerned residents, there is no legal recourse.
It's not illegal to fly a flag like that, despite the offensiveness of what people may think of it, but it is not legal.
Some worry how the town will be perceived if the flags aren't taken down.
It's nice and calm here, but when they see stuff like that, it's going to be town gossip for sure, and it's something we should not be flying in our town for sure.
CTV News tried to contact the person responsible, but did not receive a response. The RCMP say that it is up to the resident to take down the flags, as it is an issue of free speech. Nathaniel Dove, CTV News, Kelleher.
So the story doesn't end there. A man from the nearby George Gordon First Nation got tired of waiting for the flags to come down, so he did it himself and burned them on a Facebook Live video.
Watch this burn.
The flags upset many Kelleher residents, but the RCMP said that they weren't illegal, while the town's mayor said the owner should take them down and would eventually. Caleb Pelche just climbed up and removed the flags himself, then set them on fire. Pelche says that he took that action because he found the flags offensive. We will continue following that story to Manitoba now, where first-time Métis home buyers can get a leg up when it comes to making that monumental purchase. The Manitoba Métis Federation launched a new program to get help for people who are in rentals and want to get into home ownership. Brittany Hobson met one of those people doing just that.
Dominic Bourgeois is celebrating a purchase many young adults dream of. The 29-year-old is the first Métis citizen to buy a home under the Manitoba Métis Federation's new program.
I felt very honored when I got the call. You know, like I said, it was a whole lot of waterworks. There was a little emotional breakdown at work.
The program launched earlier this year. It's called the First Time Home Buyers Program, and it aims to do just that.
A lot of our people have the ability to make that mortgage payment because they're making their rent payment. But they were just not quite there to get that down payment, and that's what this is for.
Will Goodon says the Federation has already approved more than 100 applications. He expects to see another 300 citizens approved for funding within the next year. The program is a result of a promise made to Métis leader Louis Riel in 1870. It was broken and left unfulfilled for generations until now.
The head start that the land symbolizes is the head start that's happening here today.
For Bourgeois, the program gave her a chance to purchase something outside of her budget.
Well, I imagined one day moving out of my parents' basement and, you know, finding another place to live, whether it be an apartment, a condo, a house. My boyfriend and I we like spending time outside, having a yard, having neighbors, being in like a fantastic community like this with our neighbors. Like some of my neighbors came out to watch what was going on because of the commotion. That was really important to us.
MMF President David Chartrand says in the future he hopes to expand the program to include families who've outgrown their current homes.
There's not a doubt we'll probably be venturing beyond the first-time home buyer. We'll be venturing into that field because we want to have as many of our citizens owning homes.
Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
In British Columbia, firefighters are making progress with a major wildfire that's triggered a state of emergency in the central part of that province. The fire, which is believed to be man-made, broke out on Saturday afternoon near the town of Fraser Lake. It grew from 4 hectares to 260 overnight due to dry conditions and gusty winds. The Chief Information Officer of British Columbia's Wildfire Service says what they really need now is a helping hand from the weather.
By no means is the fire out, but definitely nowhere near as intense as it was Saturday when it first started. High winds on Saturday, unseasonably hot and dry conditions, not only in that part of the province, but really across BC, definitely drove a lot of that activity. So definitely good news on this fire, but still potential out there for others to be popping up.
The fire danger rating across most of British Columbia is now listed at moderate to high. We need to take a quick break, but there's more news to come, and here's tomorrow's weather forecast where you live. Heading up to northern Alberta, we've got 13 in sunshine in Fort McMurray, 12 and rain in Grand Prairie. 21 in sunshine for Red Deer, 25 down in Lethbridge. 11 in rain in Tofino, 20 in rain in Penticton, 16 and rain in Quesnel. Dease Lake is 12 and rainy, as is Prince George, 11s for Sandspit and Prince Rupert. 18s for Beaver Creek, Dawson and Mayo, sunny skies up there. Wrigley and Fort Simpson are sunny and 12, as is Norman Wells. 5 for Wattie and Yellowknife. Inuvik is 6 in sunshine, -2 and clear up in Sachs Harbor. -1 in snow in Baker Lake and Chesterfield and Whale Cove and Arviat. 3 in sunshine in Arctic Bay, 4 and sunny in Pangertung, 3 and some rain in Iqaluit. Welcome back. We have an APTN exclusive story for you now from British Columbia. APTN Investigates has obtained a 2.5-hour video of a BC RCMP officer interviewing an Indigenous teen girl about an alleged sexual assault. At one point, he asks her if she was turned on during the attack. The girl was in foster care at the time of the alleged attack and also during the interview by police. Here's a clip of that interview, and note it may be disturbing to some viewers.
Were you at all turned on during this at all, even a little bit?
No.
Physically, you weren't at all responsive to his advances, even maybe subconsciously?
Maybe subconsciously, but no, not. I was really scared.
Okay. Because you understand that when a guy tries to have sex with a female and the female is completely unwilling, it's very difficult, right?
Yeah, it hurt a lot.
It hurt a lot at the beginning?
For the whole thing.
Okay, and how does that compare to experiences you've had in the past sexually?
It didn't hurt this much. Like, I actually bled yesterday in my underwear.
Okay. And where's that underwear now?
It's evidence somewhere.
With more on that video, I'm joined now by APTN Investigates producer Holly Moore and reporter Brittany Guillot. So, Holly, this was an APTN Investigates story about a social worker who was alleged to have taken money from kids that were in foster care at the time. Explain to us how that connects to the videos that we just saw.
Okay, so last fall, the news came from BC that a social worker had allegedly been siphoning off money. He would set up joint bank accounts with the clients, give them what they needed to live on, sometimes not enough to live on, and then keep money for himself. So one of the applicants in this lawsuit against the ministry was actually profiled in Cullen Crozier's Broken Trust in spring. Now, one of the people has now amended their statement of claim to include that there was a cover-up of a sexual assault allegation that she made against an acquaintance during her time in foster care.
Okay.
So what happened is these videos that we've seen are of an RCMP officer interviewing a vulnerable youth, and basically they were the result of a production order that was filed by the woman's lawyer looking for all the investigation notes, everything to do with this case. So we don't normally see the inner workings of when RCMP are interviewing sex assault victims, particularly Indigenous women.
Well, when we hear all these stories about what people who say, you know, I went to the police with a sexual assault complaint and how I was treated, now we actually get to see a glimpse in these videos of some of the things that we've heard anecdotally about how Indigenous women are treated. Brittany, you're new with APTN Investigates. You've watched the videos in its entirety. What was your reaction as you watched?
Well, it was pretty shocking, mainly because he was asking her a lot of questions that were, I mean, they were just hypothetical questions about scenarios that didn't actually happen and didn't pertain to the actual incident. And I think that really only served to distract her.
As you're watching, did you, I mean, we've described it as disturbing. People got to see what it looks like. But as an Indigenous woman yourself, how do you, are you able to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who'd be making a complaint like that and then think about how you would feel having the police interact with you in that way?
You know, I think that I would feel pretty alone and like unheard. And I think that happens all too often for Indigenous women.
And like you said, Holly, we now we got a glimpse of it finally after, you know, lots of people talk about it and now we get to see something like this. Holly, so what happens now?
Well, right now what is happening is the case will continue. Of course, it has now moved to a different level. So whereas before there was a certain award that was being sought, this definitely ups the ante. I mean, if they can prove, and it hasn't been proven yet, that there was a cover-up by a ministry employee to, you know, quash a sex assault complaint, that is a big, huge deal. The other thing that we hope will happen is that Indigenous justice advocates will see the video, help us unpack it a bit more, also help us understand just how difficult it is for Indigenous women to report sexual assaults and really try to hold the RCMP to account on this. So we've got calls into the ministry, we've got calls into the RCMP, we've got calls into the individual social workers, and really, my gut reaction to this video was, there were parts where I had tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a 17-year-old girl alone. There's social workers present for a very short period of time. And the only thing they asked her is if she, what was it?
They only asked her if she wanted to go for a hamburger, to which she replied, no, I want to keep talking about this case.
Well, we're glad that you at APTN Investigates are going to keep following this, and we look forward to seeing how it all shakes out. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
You can read the full story on our website, aptnnews.ca. Neighbors of a sobering center in Yellowknife are raising concerns over violence they've witnessed in the past few months, many of which have been captured and shared on social media, causing widespread concern in the community and beyond. Our reporter Charlotte Morat-Jacobs has that story, and another warning, these videos contain graphic violence.
Behind this window, April Desjardins monitors security cameras. A routine task after violence she's witnessed outside her office. On April 10th, Desjardins called emergency responders.
Okay, I'm just trying to build a file here for our officers, okay?
Yeah. This person does not look like they're breathing on the ground.
Okay,
A woman is knocked to the ground.
Okay.
This came right after Desjardins heard the Department of Health and Social Services praise the atmosphere of the facility in a City Hall meeting. She too had voiced her opinions on the changed atmosphere by the building, which acts as both a sobering center and a day shelter.
I felt that my concerns weren't heard, and then the next day was when the female was knocked unconscious, and I was sitting here, exactly right here, with a client, and to feel her head resonate on my feet, because she was hit so hard and she was knocked unconscious for well over 2 minutes.
She's taken to Facebook and posted several altercations which involve people presumably in the area because of the shelter.
Desjardins says she isn't advocating for the day shelter and sobering center to close, as she knows they provide a vital service to many. However, she doesn't agree with the location, as they share the same alleyway with the downtown liquor store.
Operations at the day shelter are managed by the NWT Disabilities Council, contracted by the Territorial Health and Social Service Department. APTN requested an interview through the department, but were unable to get a response by airtime.
The proximity of the day shelter to the liquor store is encouraging a never-ending cycle of binge drinking, and we see it day in and day out. But as the afternoon moves on and the day moves on, and individuals are into like their second or third or fourth bottles, that's when the violence increases.
On the same block, property owner John Williston says he, like Desjardins, was not consulted before the opening of the shelter.
We weren't consulted. Nobody came and said, what do you think we're going to do this? Do you have any ideas, any suggestions? How do you think it's going to impact your businesses here?
According to Williston, business has declined.
Fights in Subway. The poor guy that owns Subway, he's been burdened with that. The gals in Korea House, there will be days they lock the door, and then when they see a customer coming, they run out and unlock the door.
Desjardins is now advocating for a good neighbor agreement with all stakeholders in the area.
We had something in place, something that addresses all the challenges that we have, something that holds people accountable, something that maybe is enforceable by a bylaw.
Until then, she'll continue to monitor street fights behind a window, but right in front of her eyes. Charlotte Morat-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
It's time for us to take another quick break, but there's more news to come, and here's the rest of tomorrow's weather. Starting off on the East Coast, we've got 10 and rain in St. John's, 5 and rain in Halifax. Sunny skies and 14 in Happy Valley Goose Bay and 12 in sunny in Cartwright. St. Joe Vitas 6 and rain. Shubugamu 10 and rain. 15s for Sarnia and London with mostly sunny skies. 16 and sunny in Sault Ste. Marie. 17 and rain in Sioux Lookout. Wawa is 14 and sunshine. 10 and sunny in Thompson. God's Lake is 12, as is Norway House. Sunny skies there. 20 degrees in Winnipeg and Brandon. 17 for Dauphin and Princess Harbor. 18 and sunny in Saskatoon. 22 in sunshine in Estevan. 13 in sunshine in Buffalo Narrows. 6 up in Stony Rapids and 17 in Meadow Lake. Welcome back. A former Nunavut premier has picked up some large national recognition. Eva Ariak has been named to the Order of Canada. Ariak was named a member of the Order of Canada at a ceremony in Rideau Hall in Ottawa. In addition to being the first and only woman ever to be premier of Nunavut, she was also Nunavut's first language commissioner. Members of the Order of Canada are chosen for local and regional contributions, and they highlighted her work to preserve and grow Inuktitut. It's a finish that'll go down in sporting history as one of the best ever. Kawhi Leonard's buzzer-beating shot to win Game 7, sending the Toronto Raptors to the Eastern Conference Final. Watch this.
Kawhi up top, looks at the clock, turns the corner for the win!
Amazingly, this is the first Game 7 buzzer beater in NBA history, and it was like the ending of a Hollywood movie. The ball bounced off the rim 4 times as Leonard, other players, and fans collectively held their breath. The reaction when it did go in was priceless, giving the Raptors a 92-90 victory over the Philadelphia 76ers. The Raps will now play the Milwaukee Bucks. Game 1 is Wednesday in Milwaukee. That's all the news I have for you this Monday. Be sure to check out our website, aptnnews.ca, to catch up on anything that you've missed, including the latest developments in the Indian Day School settlement approval hearings. Or you can download the APTN News app on your phone. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a great night, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.